It's alive! It's alive! It's alive! It's alive!
Hello and welcome to Alive After Reading. I'm Tim Niederreiter, and with me today is a special guest, new to the podcast, Jennifer Ann Gordon. Welcome.
Hey, thank you, Timothy. Thank you for having me. Thank you for me plans on a Friday night during a pandemic. So that feels cool.
You know, I mean, this show, I do tend to record it on a Friday night. It's not live, though, so it comes out Sunday morning. It's very confusing to if people, you know, we're moving the veil here just slightly.
Yeah, so my name is Jennifer Ann Gordon. I'm thrilled to be here. I am a horror novelist, specifically Gothic horror, though I am dipping my toes into some speculative fiction right now with my current work in progress. I wrote the award-winning novel Beautiful, Frightening, and Silent, which just recently won the Kindle Award and the Authors on the Air Award for Best Horror Novel of 2020. I also have written the Hotel series, which includes From Daylight to Madness and When the Sleeping Dead Still Talk, and that is a Victorian horror-based series. And yeah, that's about it. I host a podcast too.
Yeah, nice.
We're podcast twins.
Podcast siblings, maybe. Twins are hatched from the same egg, if you know what I mean. As an actual biological twin myself, that's how I see it.
That is crazy. I was supposed to be a twin, but my mother miscarried in like the fifth month. So I have this weird obsession with twins. So
you missed a very exciting life. You missed a very exciting life that you could have had with a twin.
Now I'm just an only child.
Oh, that's
and it would have been
that's boring. To me. I mean, not to pass judgment or just like I just think you would have been much luckier if you'd had a twin because my twin is my favorite human basically.
I love hearing that.
Anyway, that was a weird way to start the podcast, but it's fun. There's always gonna be something. You never know what's gonna come out of left field here. But yeah, my twin brother. I have an identical twin, and we're both kind of gigantic, bearded, bald people now. So it's kind of funny how that works.
So yeah, I was obsessed when I was a kid with there was a book series made for little girls called Sweet Valley High, and it was about two blonde beautiful twin girls that have nice cars and fancy friends and stuff like that, and I was just obsessed. I read every single one of them. There was a show that was on TV about these identical twins. I think it was called Double Trouble or something dumb like that, and I was obsessed with that too. I have this upcoming work that I'm going to be doing, that I'm writing, that is actually a twin-based horror novella.
That's interesting. I honestly, I actually haven't written a whole lot about twins because I don't know why. It's just okay. Maybe because it's not as interesting to me because this is just how it is, you know.
Right.
But it has really informed the kind of the structure of how I create characters, because I've always basically got two characters. I the main character and basically their best friend, who's kind of a stand-in for a twin in a lot of cases. And in one of my favorite books, actually, it's called Orphan Mage. It's an epic fantasy novel. But the main character and his best friend character, originally the best friend is going to be the main character. So it's kind of this weird, these guys diverged when I was creating the kind of just brainstorming characters, and I'm like, okay, would the whale prince be the better hero, or would this orphan guy be the better hero? And I'm like, okay, the orphan guy's the orphan. I decided to go with the guy who was an orphan, but he's got a lot of other things going for him. Anyway, it's kind of this interesting, I still kind of wonder what it would have been like if I'd written the book with the other guy as the main character, you know?
You could always write a short story or something, still based in that universe, and tell it from the other character's point of view.
That's a good point. And he did grow. I mean, obviously, my characters, as a discovery writer myself, my characters always grow a lot. How do you discover your characters? Or, I mean, with horror, I always wonder about that kind of process, especially.
So I'm a I'm a pantser, so I go into it with, I know who the people are, kind of like a rough outline of them. Like I know them, but when I'm writing is when I discover them, when I really like get inside their head and figure out what makes them tick. Sometimes I type things and I'm like, whoa, that came out of left field, but now I really understand this person. Like, so I'm this work in progress that I'm doing, which isn't the horror novel about twins, but there is a twin aspect in this book too that I didn't even think of when I like came up with my character, my main male character in this book, and all of a sudden it just popped out like one line. It was like, oh, blah da 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 da, his twin sister when they were 11, and I'm like, oh,
suddenly
he's a completely different person now.
Yes. Oh, that's awesome. Yeah,
I'm like,
usually,
oh,
yeah. Yeah, usually with me, I discover the characters it's kind of similar for me with characters, but today it was very strange because it happened with plot, with like the actual twist in the story. Like, okay, and in this case, it literally involved a river. I was writing today, and I'm like, okay, so the scene's going to do this because I have a little stub for what the scene's going to be at the beginning, and I'm like, well, the scene didn't do any of that. I found the main the character for this scene is another fantasy, so there's multiple points of view in this book. The character had been in a fight. And he'd been hurt, and I'm like, oh, and then I realized, oh, he'd been hurt really badly. About a third of the way into the first paragraph, I'm like, oh, that's good. So he's dying. That's really gonna be nice. That's nice. That's a good twist. Great. He needs help.
Yeah, when I was writing my book that recently came out in November, When the Sleeping Dead Still Talk, it's a character that had been introduced in my book From Daylight to Madness, and when I introduced him. The series is about mental illness in the Victorian era. So when I introduced him, I thought in my head that he was suffering from like mania or bipolar disorder, what we would call that today. And then all of a sudden, like, a third of the way into his book, the book that's all about him, he started hallucinating. And I'm like, oh, that's so weird.
So he's got some other problem as well.
Yeah, I'm like,
instead.
I know. Yeah. I'm like, oh, okay. Maybe that was just like a one-off thing. And then I'm like, no. Like it just kept coming back. And it was great to go back and kind of rewrite that book and put in a couple different symptoms earlier. So it didn't just like pop right out of left field. Like, what? This is not the person we were reading about before.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's the thing I always fear doing, because when I'm writing series, which I'm still pretty new at, actually, I fear like, oh, maybe this character is going to come off completely different in this next book, because I discover so much about them writing the first book. What if they just keep changing? And actually, I've kind of settled on that's probably okay. As long as they start where they finished the previous book, more or less.
Yeah. Yeah, because, we as people just change over time.
Right.
And we change due to our experiences. And that's happened to me before. Sometimes like I have like a little tiny side character, and then all of a sudden they just won't stop like in my head, or they won't stop talking. And I'm like, oh gosh, you were just supposed to be a throwaway.
Yeah.
Like very specifically my character Agnes, who is not likable in From Daylight to Madness and When the Sleeping Dead Still Talk. But for some reason, she's terrible in From Daylight to Madness. And I kept getting reviews of people who were like, oh God, I hope the next book has more Agnes in it. And they didn't realize I was already about 3/4 of the way through writing the next book. And there was more Agnes. And I'm like, God, I can't believe there's so much Agnes.
And then you're like, I guess I'm on the right track. Those reviews help.
Exactly, because all I could think was people are going to hate this because I'm putting so much of her in this book. But then it turns out people, they loved to hate her. They hated to love her.
Yeah.
One of those things.
Yeah.
And then, I just had someone recently say like, when I got to the end of the book, I felt like it was never Francis's story at all. It was always Agnes's. And I'm like, what?
Wow.
That's like kind of cool.
Yeah.
Because I never thought of it like that. But I did do a lot of thinking about that character, and she wouldn't leave me alone.
Yeah. It's interesting. I would have hoped. I mean, that's almost like the best thing you can get though, from at least if you ask me, from writing a character who's it sounds kind of like possibly an antagonist or is someone, not someone who's an unpleasant character. Because I love that kind of thing. I love the characters that, like, oh, this character's kind of stood out, even though, he or she is a total monster or whatever. It's like, I mean, like literally the guy, the one I'm bringing back this character who was one of the villain point of view in the first book in this series, in book 3. I'm like, okay, I hope people aren't going to get mad at me. Because he did some nefarious things by the end of book 1. I'm like, okay, so, but then he's not in book 2 at all because it's kind of an episodic series. So and then he pops back up. It's very like it may be an epic fantasy. I was actually thinking more like Dresden Files because he's like not even really a factor in the second book. He's just off somewhere else. And in the Dresden, even though this is epic fantasy, it feels more like the urban fantasy. Like, okay, here comes the guy the noir. I thought we killed you. Should have knocked you out last time, or whatever. Anyway, but your series sounds really fascinating. I want to get into that for a second because when I hear gothic horror, I don't necessarily think serious, and I do think mental issues.
yeah. There's usually somebody locked in an attic. So
yeah, Jane Eyre comes to mind.
Yeah, there was a little bit of Jane Eyre influence in these books, but more nightmarish. And so I write gothic horror, and I didn't even intend for this to be a series, to be honest. I thought I was writing like a really, really, really long book. But again, once I was kind of in what at the time was part 2 of this long story, it felt so different than the first half of the book. And I also realized I would not be able to market it as one book without literally giving away the end of like my
part
Night
1
Shyamalan twist. Yeah. I'm like, oh god, because there's literally going to be no way for me to explain what this is as one book. So that's when I just chopped it in half and was I'm gonna release the first part and just concentrate on the second part, because it's a 2-book series. It's a duology. The first book centers on a woman named Isabel. The second book centers around a man named Francis. So it's 2 stories, but it's a series, so it's intertwined. It's
interesting. Yeah, I actually, one of my favorite novels that are out that I've ever read are duology actually. Hyperion and the Fall of Hyperion by Dan Simmons. Those
I've never read them.
Okay, they're very difficult especially if you weren't raised as a Christian or a Catholic, because I was raised Catholic, and it really helped read these books. It really helped me read, and even though these are space opera, giant science fiction stories, if you don't have a basic understanding of the Catholic Church, it kind of makes it hard to read. And I've noticed that because I only noticed that in hindsight, because of course I was raised Catholic. I was an English major. I could read this. It's easy, but it's just a good time. But I think it was the Dead Robot Society podcast, which is one I'm a big fan of. Years ago, they read this book for their book club, and they couldn't get through the first one. Basically, like 3 out of 5 of them were like, "I couldn't take it. This is really difficult. Why were you even doing this?
Why are you doing this, man?"
I'm like, "Oh, that's my favorite book."
Yeah, I love that. I was raised Catholic too, so I should check that out.
Well, it has a nice horror element to it, honestly, as well, because
I read everything. I read most genres. I prefer to read horror or like thriller, suspense, but I love true crime. And I'll read almost anything. I'm not a huge fan of romance.
Well,
and like the happily ever after seems like odd to me in a book, because usually I don't write like that.
That's kind of an opposed instinct to the writing of horror. Yeah, I will say though, just about Hyperion briefly, that it has one of the scariest sci-fi monsters that I've ever encountered. and that's pretty cool. And he's like, it's a monster that's like, well, this guy's so scary. You don't even know. You have no idea what he is. The Shrike. You have no idea what it really is. And is it a monster or is it a god? It's that kind of thing. It's this kind of terrifying creature.
That gave me chills thinking like that.
What could it be?
Ooh, is it a monster or is it a god?
And the thing is, the impression of the whole first book, they're going to meet this thing. That's the point. There's all these travelers that are going to see if they can meet this thing because it sometimes grants people's wishes.
Oh, that never ends well.
Oh, yeah. You better believe it.
I swear, I feel like if I ever ran across something that's like, I'll grant you a wish. I mean, I've seen and read enough that I know that that's not going to go well for me.
It's like, nope, back away. That's a phishing scam, basically.
Yeah. Exactly.
And that's if you're lucky.
No, thank you. No, thank you, genie. Go back in your bottle. I'm fine.
Hey, geez. Yeah. I'm gonna table my thought there. Maybe not. Okay, so because this actually does kind of play in because it was a manga. This was but it had a very gothic kind of vibe to it. But it was the same vibe. It's like these characters. The demons in that are created when somebody makes a wish to bring one of their loved ones back, and the demon takes the loved one's body, and then it becomes a monster in there. Pretty simple, but also pretty terrifying. And then and the first thing it does is usually kill the person who made the wish. That's usually what it's told to do. The first thing. Of course.
Yeah. So my book, Beautiful, Frightening, and Silent, kind of has a similar aspect to it. It's about a haunted island where if you want something bad enough, you want to see someone bad enough, they will come back to you on this island.
That sounds interesting.
It's, yeah. And, I likened a lot of the ghostly characters in that book to, the longer they've been dead, the worse they become, their milk that's spoiling. So one of my main characters in that book has been literally haunting the same man for 60 years. So she's not the person she was when she died. She's not a person at all anymore, but she's, she's manipulative. She's, I don't want to say a succubus, but there's elements of unlikability. Her. And my main character in that book is a man named Adam, whose wife and son died in a car accident, and he feels responsible for it. And so he wants to be reunited with his very young son, his 4-year-old. And I would just say that doesn't necessarily go well.
Yes, we will refer to the earlier statement about genies and the like. Making wishes, not so good. But I love that I love that premise, and I love the idea of, the place has the power almost in that case. Or for whatever reason, you go here, and this happens, and you can see these. I mean, that's so got a creepy premise too, right there. It was like, okay, there's that dread that I can feel kind of on my neck when I hear about that. Yeah,
well, that's a lovely compliment. So I set all 3 of my novels that are out right now are actually set on this, fictionalized island off the coast of Maine. That there's just something very much not right about that island.
Yeah, and it sounds very unique. It sounds very different from the way Stephen King would write about Maine. It just comes to mind. But it's still horror too. It seems like there's an interesting parallel there, maybe. Or
I know. So I live so close to Maine, and I love it. And the island that my books take place on is like a fictionalized version of 2 separate islands that are kind of off the coast of New Hampshire and off the coast of Maine. So I fictionalized it, made it haunted as all hell, and just had fun with it. And I realized a lot of my ideas for gothic horror specifically would fit well in that universe. The universe of Dagger Island is the name of this island. So I'm writing a book right now that doesn't take place on Dagger Island, and it feels really strange. I'm like, oh, gosh, they're just like they're like in Boston.
What's it like to not be haunted? Come on.
I know. Well, I'm not saying it's not haunted.
Okay, my bad. Should jump to a conclusion there. A different kind of
but
haunting.
It is definitely a different kind of haunting. Because the book I'm writing now is, it's speculative fiction. I thought it was going to be like a dystopian rom-com. Like I really thought I was.
Wow.
That's what I was writing, and then I realized it wasn't romantic or funny. And I'm like, okay.
This is either a huge problem.
How's the rom-com coming on? I'm like, oh, it's not. I guess, I mean, the book itself is going well, but it's definitely not a romantic comedy. My husband read it and he was like, I thought you said this one was going to be funny. I'm like, it's funny. He's like, there's like a couple funny parts, but it's sad.
It's not ha-ha funny.
Yeah, I know. I'm like, there's comedy in there.
Well, yeah,
like,
and
it does take place during soon to be post-apocalyptic times, but there's comedy there.
So it's pre-apocalyptic, like immediate. Okay, no spoilers. Yeah, but that sounds very interesting. I also love a good apocalypse. Let me tell you.
Yeah, it's again, since I'm still writing it, I'm like superstitious to talk too much about it.
Of course, yeah.
But so I keep now, instead of saying it's a dystopian rom-com, I'm saying it's like Contagion meets the movie Lost in Translation.
Huh. Never seen Lost in Translation.
Oh gosh, it's such a beautiful movie, and it's so beautifully written and shot. Sofia Coppola, her script was magical, and it's about two people who just kind of meet when they're both in Japan and they don't speak the language, and they just have a very intense, close, several-day friendship that has like a longing and romanticism to it. But it's not a romance. So
wow, interesting.
It's really good. And again, I'm not a huge romance fan in like movies or books, and I don't think I could like write a love story. But I can write a good connection story. Like people have a connection they can't explain, that it borders on love, but it maybe not traditionally.
Or it's not romantic love. Yeah.
Or it's not romantic love. Or it is romantic love, but oops, one of them's a hallucination.
It turns out that one wasn't real. That's not going to be a happy ending.
It turns out that one's their schizophrenia.
Oof. Oh, now that just adds another level of narcissism there, kind of. That was another me. Oh.
Yeah.
Or a part of me.
Like, oh.
Yeah. Yep. That's a sad story right there, but it doesn't
I haven't written any happy stories yet.
Yeah. No, actually, the more I think about it, like I don't think I've released a happy story anytime recently. At least, well, maybe I guess my big space opera one set in my weirdo Pillar universe might qualify as having a happy ending, but it's hard to say because there needs to be more books in that series because it's a huge book, which is why it's taking so long to write a sequel to it. First book's like 900 pages long. 700 pages long? It's huge. It's enormous. But that's because it's just a big fat adventure. And originally I released it as 3 novellas because I thought, oh, this is big enough. I can do that. And then it only got longer when I did that. And then I'm like, but these novellas aren't that satisfying. I want the whole book together. That's how it should be. And I like it a lot better this way. But it is extremely long.
Well, there's something satisfying about like holding a really heavy book, like a really long book. Like when you read The Stand or you read It or any kind of, when you read the uncut version of Les Miserables, you feel good about yourself when you're done. You're like, I read all these words.
Yeah, I definitely felt that way. I mean, my favorite book when I was a teenager was like The Lord of the Rings, now and I gotta say, the feeling is even better, I think, when I wrote the book.
Yes.
It's like, okay, because each of those words is like, I hammered this all out. So 170,000 words in my hands, like, that's pretty cool. That's a good feeling.
They had, there was all these people on Facebook and Twitter and stuff sharing how many words they wrote, like during 2020. Yeah. And I was like, oh, I could roughly guesstimate that, like add up my books, add up, a half a draft of this, a short story here. And it was just so incredible to say, like, oh my gosh, I wrote like 250,000 words last year.
Nice. Yeah, it's a healthy sum.
It was like, I know, I'm like, that's insane. And then I remember, like, I ran out and like told my husband, I'm like, this is why I'm always tired.
It doesn't have anything to do with the additional alcohol consumption, no.
Or like just the emotional exhaustion from watching the news.
Oh my, 2020! What a year! But what a year to put the nail in the coffin and just like, okay, we're done. I'm not looking back too much. I mean, I've been wanting to make the joke for. I was like, yeah, thank God, 2020 is now hindsight. What? Whoops.
But I'm bumped.
Yeah, it's a dumb pun. It's yeah, and me with my awful vision is why I always think that's funny. The glasses, they're thick. Anyway,
are they thick?
My glasses are thick.
Yeah,
that's what I was talking about.
Yeah, I understand. I have I think normal glasses, but they are bifocals.
Oh, okay, so a little bit, yeah.
A little bit blind.
Yeah, I can basically, I mean, almost everybody in my family, and there's quite a few of us. Basically, we all got bad eyes, except for my sister, and I think mine might be the worst. Just saying something. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
And, it doesn't help that we're both writers, too. I mean, I feel like my eyesight got significantly worse in 2020 because the amount of time I've been staring at a computer screen has also gone up.
Yes. Oh, yeah. I wonder. I mean, I started writing books when I was 13, and so more of my life has been spent behind a keyboard now by a good margin than not. Not writing. I've been writing books. I wrote at least a book a year for the past 20 years or so, 17 years.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, when I was writing before, when I actually could leave the house and had a job, I would only write for a few hours a day. Because that's all I had time for. But since March, since being in quarantine, there's just no stopping the amount of either writing you can do or procrastinating that you can do or research. I use air quotes on research.
Yeah, that's also called procrastination sometimes. Yep,
I know. And sometimes I'm like, what if I just look up images that I'm going to use in promo graphics, and then I can go down a rabbit hole on Shutterstock and iStock Photo, and all of a sudden I'm like, oh my gosh, I've been looking at pictures for 3.5 hours.
Oh man, oh yeah,
and downloading the things and putting them in my little folder that has my book's name on it. I'm like, and then I realized I'm not the only one that does that. I have a good friend who's also a Gothic fiction writer. Her name is Christy Stratos, and she does the same thing. She's like, you might know Christy.
Yeah, I've talked to her on this show a couple times.
Yeah. Okay. So she does the same thing. She's like, is it procrastination when I just spend all day looking at pictures, or is it looking for inspiration? And I'm like, inspiration? Let's go with that.
Yeah. I mean, I do similar stuff. I've Scrivener files that I just pack full of images and notes, documents, and they just overflow. And because I'm a role-playing game nerd, I also got my rules and stuff and my character sheets and all this nonsense, all in one big file in a lot of cases. And then the whole book's in there too. Not so much of the D&D these days. Though actually, I am in a Snakes and Saloons game right now that's really funny and fun. And Snakes and Saloons is Dungeons and Dragons. It's just basically it's a Western though. So it takes place and this one is it's like a family feud, and I'm playing that one with my old co-host from the other podcast I did, which was about role-playing games. That should be coming back soon, but who knows? It's a tough time now I'm in 2 games. I'm like, okay, so when am I going to get back to actually be able to talk about these on a podcast? Not that I'm really worried about it, because online games have really boomed with the addition of since COVID came out, which is to my gain because I don't have a lot of people around me who want to play.
Yeah.
Or at least I don't know many of them.
Yeah, I used to play D&D, and I haven't in a million years because, again, I don't have anybody in my life currently right now that's let's play D&D. But I keep joking with my co-hosts on my podcast, Vox Vomitus, that we're going to do like a Vox Vomitus game night show where we just
you should totally
get a bunch of authors and have like one of them be the DM. And my co-hosts are like, but we don't know how to play Dungeons and Dragons. And we're like, that's going to be even more fun.
It's actually really simple. This new edition's really easy to play. And I'm pretty pleased with it. 5th edition D&D, really good. And if you've been out of a while, there were, I started playing back in, actually I played just about every edition of D&D, but though a lot of them were pretty old when I started playing, of course.
Yeah.
But compared to the editions that I really sank my teeth into, 3rd edition, 5th edition's way better, and it's way simpler. So it's really good.
That's good to know.
Yeah. So it wouldn't be that hard, and I would totally jump at an opportunity. I'm sure you the bigger authors, but to run a game for other authors is one of my favorite things to do.
See, that would be really cool because I've floated this idea by a couple authors when they've been on our show, and they're like, yeah, I'd come back for that. And I'm like, oh, we have to make it happen sometime. Because one of them was Matt Ruff who wrote Lovecraft Country.
Oh, yeah.
I was like, would you come on a show and like play D&D with us? And he's like, yeah, I would love that. I'm like,
I would totally do that. Jeez. Yeah, it's like, well, that's something.
I think I started crying. Oh my gosh.
It's just another episode of the dangers of interviewing the people you really respect.
Like, when you accidentally start to cry when they talk.
Oh boy.
I've actually I haven't cried yet. I used to cry when I went to comic conventions and I met the comic creators I really liked. I've cried like on comic creators, like,
well, just as long as they're not writing or drawing at the time.
I know. No, I remember there was like a few people that like were really sweet. One was Peter David, and he like came out from behind the table and like hugged me. And I'm like, thank you so much. But then a couple of them, I feel like I could physically see them like shrinking away from me. Like, oh gosh, this is a crazy person. She's crazy. She's a crazy one. You can see it in her eyes. But I get very excited about my fandom.
Oh yeah, it's a shit. It's actually too bad that I have to say this. Then I don't cry. No, but we're about out of time.
Oh no!
I know it just flies though. This show is a very tight window because I have a bit of a budget crunch here. But anyway,
no, I get it. I do the same thing on my show. I'm like, it's been 38 minutes, people. Wrap it up.
Yeah, no, but it's been great having you on the show, Jennifer. It's really fun.
Thank you, Timothy. Thank you. Yeah, anytime.
Yes, wonderful.
And talk about geek stuff with you.
Yeah. Well, I didn't get that out of your bio that you were a geek. This is something I should have...
I used to own a comic book store.
Ooh, okay. That explains a lot. Anyway. And it's all to the good. It's all to the good.
You're like, oh, I get it now.
Well, thanks for being on the show. It's been awesome. Where can people find you and your books and your podcast?
The easiest place to find everything, my books, links to my books are on there, links to the podcast are on there, links to everything, my press, all that stuff is on my website, JenniferAnnGordon.com, and that's Anne with an E, like Anne of Green Gables, for all those big Anne of Green Gables fans out there.
All right. And, that's okay. I thought you were going to keep going. People often do, but you nailed it with one site. That's great.
Yeah, it's easiest. That's why I'm like, oh gosh. Also, all my social media links are on there too. So JenniferAnnGordon.com.
Wonderful. That's
the best place.
As for this podcast, you can find us at mentalcellarpublications.com. You can actually follow Tim Niederreiter. That's Tim, not Timothy Niederreiter on Facebook. That's Tim Niederreiter is my author page, and you can if you follow that page, you'll get notified every time I drop a show, and you'll be safe from the monsters of the internet or something. Maybe not. You're on Facebook. What am I saying? Anyway, I can't.
That's where the monsters are.
Yeah, I cannot guarantee that you will not be eaten by a grue if you go onto Facebook. But give it a shot anyway if you want to follow the show. And thanks for listening, everybody. You can also find my books at Amazon.com. I'm Tim Niederreiter. You knew that already. So thanks for listening, and thanks once again to Jennifer Ann Gordon for entertaining the show for a while.
Thank you.
Well, it's been great. Talk to you later, folks. And I'll see you next week, in the middle of the week, for our next episode. Who knows what it will be, though. Bye.
Bye.
That tears it.